The sun hadn't yet cracked the horizon when I saw the glint of bolt cutters slicing through my fence. My coffee was still steaming in my hand, and there, in the dim light, was HOA Officer Carl Dempsey, strutting onto my ranch like he was on a covert mission. His neon vest glowed faintly, clipboard tucked under his arm, oblivious to the fact that the 160 acres he just invaded belonged to me, Jake Harper, the sheriff of this entire county. I set my mug down, a grin creeping across my face. Some folks wake up to birds chirping. I woke up to a lawsuit walking straight into my trap. Carl didn't even glance at the cameras I had perched along the fence line. He stepped over the severed chain with the confidence of a man who thought his HOA badge was a free pass. He paused to jot something down, probably some nonsense citation about my fence being an inch too tall, then marched toward my irrigation lines like he just staked a claim. The guy had the kind of arrogance that comes from never hearing no as a kid, and clearly, he hadn't learned to fear it as an adult. My ranch is no cookie-cutter suburban lot. It's 160 acres of rolling fields, weathered posts, and the kind of quiet you earn through sweat and time. It's land that breathes freedom, not the kind of place you leash with HOA rulebooks. But Carl had decided, based on some half-baked theory about communal zones, that my property was under his jurisdiction. I'd laughed the first time he suggested it. The second time, I warned him. The third time, he brought bolt cutters. I climbed into my truck, my German Shepherd Scout, leaping into the passenger seat like he could smell trouble brewing. The gravel crunched as we rolled toward the cut gate, the ranch glowing in the early morning fog. Carl was crouched by my irrigation line, muttering into a headset like he was running a sting operation. When I pulled up, he didn't flinch, just stood, brushing off his khakis with that smug look people get when they think their title makes them untouchable. "Sheriff Harper," he said, my name sounding like it left a sour taste. "We're surveying for the HOA. Possible violations on your perimeter." "This land's not part of your HOA," I replied, stepping out. He sighed, while viewing at the fields like a game show host. "According to updated boundary assessments, these plots might qualify as shared-use buffer zones." "You mean my hayfield?" I said, voice flat. "It's deeded, fenced, and registered under my name. You cut a locked gate. That's trespassing." Carl smirked, like I'd offered him a cookie. "With all due respect, Sheriff, HOAs often have implied access when borders are unclear." I stepped closer. "I'm not talking policy, Carl. I'm talking criminal trespass." His eyes flicked to Scout, who sat rigid in the truck bed, ears up. "That your dog?" "He's my deputy." Carl chuckled, but he took a half-step back. "Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be." "You already did," I said, leaning in. "You walked onto a sheriff's ranch and vandalized private property." He stiffened, muttered something about legal reviews, and slunk back through the broken fence. I didn't stop him. Not yet. Back at the house, I pulled up the security footage, a crystal clear video of Carl cutting the lock, trespassing, and even while viewing at the camera like it was a neighbor's doorbell. I saved it to a drive, set it beside my badge, and waited. Men like Carl don't stop when you tell them to. They stop when they trip over their own ego. Sure enough, a week later, there he was again, his HOA vest a bright speck at my fence line. This time, he brought a landscaping crew, 4 guys in matching polos, hauling weed trimmers and paint cans. Carl waved them in like a foreman, and they started spraying orange lines across my gravel path and marking my hay bales. I watched from my truck, parked just out of sight, letting the absurdity unfold. They even nicked an irrigation pipe, water bubbling up through the dirt like a warning. When I stepped out, arms crossed, Carl didn't even look surprised. "Morning, Sheriff," he said, like we were chatting at the post office. "Just a routine perimeter inspection for VY compliance." "That's livestock feed you're painting," I said, nodding at the bales. "Temporary markings," he shrugged. "We're assessing VY-ability easements." "This is ranch land, Carl. The only thing I'm blocking is sunlight." he sighed, gesturing with his clipboard. New records suggest parts of this ranch may be unassigned community buffer space. That's the second time you've said may. I cut in. You don't have authority here. This land's deeded and surveyed. One of the workers held up a broken pipe. Think we hit something? I crouched, water soaking the dirt. That's a due law 1000 repair, I said, standing. You're about 5 minutes from a criminal mischief charge. Carl folded his arms. Calm down, Sheriff. Getting heated won't clarify property lines. I radioed my deputy, Ellie, to bring the survey maps and restraining order we'd prepped. Then I turned to Carl, smiling. I'm not heated. I'm documenting. Every move you've made is on camera. His confidence flickered. The crew started packing up, one guy looking pale as he tossed red flags into the truck. Ellie pulled up with a folder of parcel maps and legal plats, handing them to Carl without a word. His face fell as he flipped through. Me ranch was clearly outside HOA territory, no overlap, no buffer zone. He muttered about mismatched files and left, but I knew he wasn't done. The citations started REVY in giallo envelopes taped to my gate. One claimed my barn, built in '89, was an unauthorized structure. Another griped about grass height. By week's end, I had a stack thicker than a phone book. It was bureaucratic harassment, plain and simple, designed to bury me in paperwork. But Carl had picked the wrong target. I marched into the county clerk's office, pulling every zoning map and HOA charter tied to the Whispering Pines sub-EVY shown. By midnight I had proof my land had never been part of their domain. Then a realtor friend called, asking if I was selling my east pasture. Apparently, the HOA was sniffing around, claiming it as underutilized green space. That's when I realized Carl wasn't just annoying, was building a case to seize my land. A new sign appeared outside my gate. Proposed development site, pending REVYEW. No permit, just Carl's imagination. I yanked it out, called the county zoning office, and had an inspector document the damaged broken pipes, painted bales, cut fences. The inspector nodded as he left, and I knew he'd seen enough. Then came the big move. A glossy invite arrived for a Community Pride Day at East Meadow Trailhead, my pasture. Carl was hosting a full-blown event on my land. I didn't say a word, just waited as trucks rolled in with tents, bounce houses, and a popcorn machine parked by my fence. By noon, kids were running through my field, and Carl strutted like a small-town king, high-five-ing folks while a banner screamed, HOA Family Fest. I sat in my truck, drone buzzing overhead, recording every step. When I finally stepped out, badge on, scout at my side, the crowd hushed. Carl didn't see me until I was 6 feet away. Sheriff Harper, he stammered. Didn't expect you. Didn't expect half your HOA throwing a party on my ranch, I said. You're all trespassing. He blinked, confused. This land's been used by the community. No, it hasn't, I cut in. You cut my fence, sprayed my hay, and threw an unpermitted event. I've got drone footage, timestamps, and facial recognition. You're under arrest for trespassing, vandalism, and illegal assembly. The crowd froze. A bounce house sagged as vendors packed up. I cuffed Carl, his hands shaking, and led him through the stunned crowd to Ellie's patrol car. Within 30 minutes, the pasture was empty, littered with cups and stakes, but silent. I didn't feel triumphant, just precise, like I'd played the winning move in a long game. The courtroom was dusty, the air thick with tension. Carl sat across the aisle, suit wrinkled, his lawyer flipping through notes like they held salvation. Judge Marlowe, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, cut through the lawyer's flimsy defense about good faith mistakes and blurry boundaries. I handed over my EVY Denke, drone footage of Carl directing vendors, maps showing my land's clear boundaries, and a zoning commissioner's testimony that the HOA's claims were baseless. The judge's ruling was swift. All citations were voided, the HOA was ordered to pay for damages, and Carl was stripped of authority and barred from my property. He left the courtroom deflated, a man who'd stepped into his own trap. The fallout was seismic. HOA board members resigned, whispers of disbanding grew louder, and Carl vanished, his house sold at a loss. I bought the adjacent parcel quietly, fencing it with oak signs. Private ranch. No HOA access. A developer's plan for a rec center collapsed when my purchase cut off their access. The HOA's summer picnic was cancelled, and neighbors started nodding my way at the feed store, respect replacing fear. One evening, former board members showed up at my porch, hats in hand, apologizing for not stopping Carl. I poured coffee, and we talked not about lawsuits, but about fences, livestock, and what makes a neighbor good. Days later, I hosted a cookout. Neighbors brought pies, kids ran free, and string lights glowed as fiddles played. I gave a short speech by the fire pit, saying ownership isn't just deeds, it's respect, knowing where your reach ends. That night, I walked the fence line, flashlight in hand. The sign stood firm, the pasture quiet. Scout brushed my leg, and I knelt to scratch his ears. The stars burned bright, and the land felt clean, like a storm had passed. Carl was gone, his shadow lifted. The ranch was mine again, not just on paper, but in the silence of a fight won fair and square.